You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Hello and welcome to Law Talk on Germantown Municipal Television. My name is Vince Perryman and I'm a local attorney with the law offices of J. Vincent Perryman. Each month, Law Talk focuses on a wide range of legal issues and topics. On today's show, we'll discuss access to justice. With us now is Linda Warren Seeley, chair of the Memphis Bar Association's Access to Justice Committee. Linda, thanks for being with us.
Sure, glad to be here, Vince.
And I guess the place to start, because a lot of people are sitting here going, access to justice,
sure.
What is that? So.
It's kind of it's one of those generic terms that just takes into account all different kinds of things. But as a general rule, when you talk about access to justice, what you're talking about is programs that are available to the general public that are staffed by volunteer lawyers. They're usually free to the general public. Now, some of the services do have an eligibility component. For example, I've worked for Memphis Area Legal Services for many years now. In order for the general public to get access to a free lawyer, they have to qualify for our services. And there are eligibility requirements based on income, based on your assets, and things like that. Now, that being said, for example, we get money from the Aging Commission of the Mid-South. That's to assist people who are 60 years of age and older. There is no income or asset eligibility to be able to get an attorney through us under that grant. What limits that grant is the kinds of cases that we focus on. So if you're 60 years of age and older and you just have a generic divorce case, you're not going to get legal assistance. You have to have something that's much more, that's going to result in either a loss of income or a loss of your home or something like that. Generally, for those kinds of cases, you're looking at either some kind of fraud or some kind of abuse situation. Okay. So Memphis Area Legal Services is probably the largest nonprofit law firm that exists here in Memphis and Shelby County that provides free legal assistance. Then you've got the Community Legal Center, which is a smaller nonprofit. They usually will provide representation to people who are slightly over our guidelines, but also because we get federal dollars at Memphis Area Legal Services, the Community Legal Center doesn't. They don't get funds from the Legal Services Corporation. So they can do things that we can't. We're not allowed to do immigration work. They can do immigration work. So the two big ones, the two big access to justice firms are going to be Memphis Area Legal Services and then the Community Legal Center. Usually we're talking about civil legal assistance, not criminal legal assistance, because of course on the criminal side, and I'm going to assume most of your viewers are not aware of this, but on the criminal side, you're entitled, if you are indigent, to appointed counsel. Usually that's through the public defender's office. So you've got access to justice issues on the civil side, which is what Legal Services and the Community Legal Center do. And then you've got, on the criminal side, the public defender's office, and then attorneys who accept criminal case appointments through the courts. But it also encompasses large numbers of attorneys who do volunteer work. And the Memphis Bar Association, which is the professional association that represents lawyers or advocates for changes in the legal system and things like that, Memphis Area Legal Services and the Community Legal Center partner with our Access to Justice Committee to try to identify where in the legal system do we need to step in and plug some gaps where people are not getting represented. So both the Memphis Bar Association, Memphis Area Legal Services, and the Community Legal Center, we have representatives that sit on this committee. We have paralegals, we have people from the law school, we have a representative from Just City, which is a newly created entity that helps to pay the costs to get an expungement, and that's Josh Spickler's newest venture. So we have a group of people who all sit on this committee from all across the different nonprofit areas, and what we try to do is identify where are there holes in the system where people aren't getting representation, and how do we fill that gap? So that's locally, but there's also a statewide Access to Justice Committee through the State Bar Association. And then through the Tennessee Supreme Court, they created an Access to Justice Commission. So there's a lot of different layers and different players that are involved in trying to figure out where is it that people are not getting help, and how do we fill that gap?
And I guess a big thing is I guess 10 years ago when I started, we were talking more like, we would discuss it just saying this is pro bono.
Right.
And then the terminology changed to the access to justice, which was more getting to the whole thing of there's hurdles to get to the courthouse sometimes, which are economic hurdles in the civil world.
Correct.
So anytime somebody hears access to justice, that's really what we're talking about is aiding those who have some hurdle from getting there.
Exactly.
To get there to get the help they need.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And so what are some of the, and I guess one question that I have with it is we've got CLC and we've got MALS. Where do because the law school's got certain clinics that they have, where does that fall in the spectrum?
Well, the law school, originally their clinical program was run out of Memphis Area Legal Services offices because we would provide the case management database so that we'd be able to track the cases and things like that, and we provided the malpractice insurance for the students. Well, when the law school was opened, the brand new one, they had plenty of space for the clinic, so the students moved over there. And they've opened a number of different clinics that aren't necessarily connected with Memphis Area Legal Services. So you're going to have the Child Advocacy Clinic, and you're going to have the Elder Law Clinic, and you're going to have the General Civil Legal Assistance Clinic, and all of those are run through the law school under the direct supervision of a clinical instructor. Okay? And they're kind of limited in the numbers of cases and the types of cases they can take. They're very focused only on certain kinds of things. But that being said, the law school has really ramped up their access to justice initiatives. For example, I guess it's the second week of March will be what they call the alternative spring break, which is where the students, instead of going down to Destin, stay here in Memphis, and they recruit other law schools to participate in this. And they run different tracks. Depending on what they'll do is they'll have maybe a pro se divorce track, or they'll go out to the senior centers and they'll do living wills and powers of attorney and things like that. And so these different tracks, the students actually provide the legal assistance, but they do it under the direct supervision of a volunteer lawyer, because you got to have a lawyer there to help them do it.
Okay, yeah, and that's a good spot for us to stop for this segment. When we return, we'll continue our discussion on access to justice. Please stay with us.
Looks like it's done.
Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. You can't see these microbes, but they might be there. So learn the right temperature to cook each type of meat. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Searching for help with dachshund breeding.
No.
Let me try. Sarah's bright, but when she's reading, she has trouble sounding out words.
Playing world music.
What?
I give up.
Wait, I was trying to show you how Sarah feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
Join parents and experts at understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues to help your child thrive.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. I'm Vince Perryman. You're watching Law Talk. Joining us on our show is the chair of the Memphis Bar Association Access to Justice Committee, Linda Warren Seeley. We were discussing access to justice. Linda, before the break, we were talking about some of the different things that the law school had stepped up outside of the clinics in access to justice, and I guess that we were talking about alternative spring break, but I know there's other things.
Oh, there's plenty of other things. For example, we started, this will be the 10th year that we've been doing it, but we do a Saturday legal clinic. And what the Saturday legal clinic is, basically it's a 2-hour program, and people come at 10 a.m. on the second Saturday of each month to the main library at 3030 Poplar Avenue. We usually have about 20 to 30 volunteer lawyers who provide who have areas of substantive expertise all across the board. And it's a walk-in clinic, it's a first come, first serve. There are no restrictions in terms of your income. Anybody can walk in the door. They have to fill out certain forms. They have to sign a limited scope retainer agreement. And we do ask questions about what's your income and your assets, mostly because what we're trying to do is to track who's coming in, what kind of questions are they asking, what's the demographic that we're reaching with this particular clinic, because what that does is that helps us to better recruit and train the volunteer attorneys who come into the clinic. But we open the doors at 10 a.m. We have a group of paralegals who volunteer their time on Saturday mornings, and they actually run the clinic. They get people to come in, people fill out their paperwork, an attorney will review the information that's on their application, and then they will sit down for 15 or 20 minutes and just kind of run through what's going on, what kind of help do you need, and they try to provide them with a small amount of legal advice. Kind of here's what you need to do, here's some next steps, here's some things, that you might want to watch out for. Sometimes you have to have people's income and assets in order to also be able to appropriately advise them, as you know. It's not that we're trying to not provide that assistance, it's just that we feel like that information is important. But we're not going to turn you away. You come in the door and we're going to make sure that an attorney sees you. And we do that, like I said, the second Saturday of every month at the main library at 3030 Poplar Avenue. We open up the doors at 10 a.m. and we stop taking applications at noon. And we do that because we have to be out of the rooms by 1. And that ensures that we get through everybody and we're out of there by 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, and then I've heard some talk of a veterans clinic as well. Is that?
Yep, we also run a veterans clinic. That's actually over at the Veterans Administration. That's on the second Tuesday of the month from noon until 2 p.m. Volunteer lawyers go over to the Veterans Administration. And what happens is that the social workers over at the VA or the Veterans Court, the one that they run down at the criminal courthouse, these are veterans who are actually referred over, who are vetted by the social workers, and they determine that yes, in fact, this person does have a civil legal problem that we feel like we can help with. Most of the veterans, the problems that they've got are related to child support, child visitation and custody, we get a lot of housing problems, lots of landlord-tenant and things like that. And then the other big issue that we see for our veterans, and we've started to see this a lot at the Saturday Legal Clinic as well, is restoration of rights, expungements of felonies, and then certificates of employability. Because of course, if you've got a felony on your record, it can significantly diminish your ability to secure employment, to get housing, to get credit. There's all kinds of problems that arise when somebody's got a felony on their record. So we've really kind of ramped up what we're doing in terms of the expungements for people.
Okay, and so what are some other clinics that might be out there that folks wouldn't be aware of?
Sure. The Community Legal Center, as I had mentioned before, they can do some things that we can't. So they have immigration clinics that they run on Tuesday and Thursday nights. We have pro se divorce clinics. People may or may not be aware, but there are forms that are available only on the Tennessee Supreme Court website. Do not buy forms from anybody else. Get the forms only off of the Tennessee Supreme Court's website. And you can download these forms and fill them out. And you can actually file for your own divorce, because these particular forms have been approved by the courts, and the courts must accept them. And what we do is, for people who qualify to use those forms, and you have to have no real property, no retirement, and no children. If you've got all of those, you can use these forms. And what we do is we have volunteer attorneys who will sit down and help you fill out the forms, make sure you've got everything completed and that kind of thing.
Now, to clarify on the no children, that's no children of that marriage.
That's correct, yes.
You know,
Thank you.
We've got so much blending now.
That's
that
true.
Folks are like, well, I got kids, but they're not his.
Not his,
or
right.
hers,
Right.
depending on who you're talking with.
Right.
So on that, we've got a little bit under a minute in this segment left. As far as, because on the pro se forms, one thing there is I know that the Circuit and Chancery Court, they have a link on their site to go get them off of the Supreme Court website.
Yes.
And then as far as the immigration clinic that's going on, what exactly are they doing over there?
Usually they're doing the U visa forms and that kind of thing. It's not for people who are here undocumented. It's for people who are having issues with the immigration services.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, because that's one that, you know,
I know,
people hear immigration, they don't know what exactly,
right.
you know, and you might have somebody walk through the door and go, I've got an H-1B visa problem, but it's not that.
Yeah.
So when we return from our break, we'll talk more with Linda about access to justice. Please stay with us.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed ours.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Get caught buzzed driving, and you could do some hard time.
Craig, knock it off.
Sorry, Mom.
It could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. And that could set you back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzzed driving is drunk driving.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. With us now is Linda Warren Seeley. We are talking about access to justice. Linda, we've talked about different clinics and things that are available and the different resources that people might not be aware of. And all. I think you said there's something online or...
There is. There's a program, it's called Tennessee Online Justice. And what happens is, and this really was created because where we saw a big gap was in the rural communities. And so what happened was, with the help of Baker Donaldson and some grant dollars, there's an online program where you can go on and you create an account with a username and a password, and you can actually type in a question, and then volunteer lawyers on the other side will scroll through the questions, and if they see you've got a question posted, they'll go in and they'll type out an answer for you. And then you go back in, your username and password, and you actually can sometimes create a dialogue online as well, talking to the attorney. My husband Carl does that a lot. That's one of his favorite ways of getting his pro bono hours in is through this Tennessee Online Justice. But it's run through the Tennessee Alliance for Legal Services, and they actually will monitor all of the questions and make sure that if you've got a question posted that somebody's actually responding to it. So
what would somebody need to Google to find that, or do you
Tennessee
know?
Online Justice.
Tennessee Online Justice.
Tennessee Online Justice.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And and then there's a mediator of the day program.
Right. Well, one of the things that the Access to Justice Committee did when we were first getting off the ground was we had a couple of the general sessions judges who'd come to us and they'd said, you know, we see lots of people come through general sessions. They don't know what they're doing. We'd like to have some attorneys down there at least once a week where we can make a referral. And that was really our first program. That was the Attorney of the Day program, and we talked about that. So on Thursday afternoons, we have attorneys down in General Sessions Court in room 134, and they'll just answer general questions, much like what we do at the Saturday Legal Clinic. But what we also found was, and this was a complaint of the General Sessions judges, that yes, people come in, yes, they're not represented, but there are some cases that just really don't need to be litigated and that could easily be resolved outside the context of the courtroom. So the ADR section of the Bar Association said, well, what we'll do is we'll recruit volunteer mediators and we will send them down to the General Sessions Court. And so what happens is the clerk of the court, if they see pro se litigants, they'll pull them out, they'll put them on a special Thursday docket in Division 4 of General Sessions. Those cases, they don't have to, but the opportunity to try to mediate the case out is provided to people. We also worked with juvenile court, and there is now a standing order for all custody and visitation cases out of juvenile court. They are required to go to mediation to see if the parties can't work it out.
Okay, yeah, that's, and some people may not know what mediation is on that, but that's basically where you've got an intermediary working to get the parties to a resolution.
Right, it's a neutral third party that basically assists people in negotiating out their problem.
And that can be, it can be helpful because a lot of people are like, well, what good is this? But the reality of it is you've got somebody that isn't involved in your mess.
Right.
Because if anything's in litigation, it's a mess.
It is a mess, yes.
And they're not involved in your mess, so they have no vested interest in it whatsoever. And your attorneys, they have vested interest in it because you're paying attorneys potentially if an attorney's involved. And with this, to where they can actually look at it with just a clean slate on it and say to you, okay, here's where this just isn't going to work if you go before a judge.
Right.
And that can be really useful to getting some people to kind of.
Well, it also gives the litigants an opportunity to create resolutions that a court would never do. I mean, basically, a court can award damages or money damages, and that's about all that they can do. Whereas in a mediation, you can actually come up with, different suggestions and scenarios, and if you'll do this, I'll do that, and then we'll be even. So I think I'm very pleased by the two volunteer mediation programs that we've been able to create. I'm hopeful that we'll eventually have a community mediation center like what they have in Nashville and Knoxville and Chattanooga and Columbia and Gallatin. We have no mediation center this side of the Tennessee River, and we need one.
When you said Columbia there, I think there may be 2 mediators in that entire region, but that's just my observation on the practice up there. But with that, so there's the mediator of the day, there's the attorney of the day, and then one thing to back up here is to, I think, explain that General Sessions Court, what that is it's a court that has jurisdiction over any dispute that's just up to $25,000.
Right.
And that's normally where we would see landlord tenants. People would think of it as a small claims court.
That's exactly right. That's what most people think of as General Sessions Court, because you don't have to have the formal pleadings. You just fill out a civil warrant, and you can get into court.
Yeah, and the thing too about it is one of the busiest courts.
Oh yes.
So.
Yes. But of course the rules of evidence apply, and that's one of those barriers to people, because if you are not familiar with the rules of evidence and you don't introduce your case in the proper way, the judge isn't allowed to help you.
Well, and that makes a good point too, whereas my explanation of access to justice was the hurdle being monetary, but then the hurdle there is not knowing the rules.
That's correct.
That you're required
That's
on how
exactly
you have
right.
to present and things like that, because it's not what we see on TV.
No, it's not.
And there are a lot of attorneys that could use some time of reading those rules too.
No comment.
Well, every young attorney I know, I sit them down and I'm like, here's the rules. Read through them, because this is powerful stuff here. Because if you can pull the rule out and use it, then you use it.
Exactly.
Because one example would be where people want to put in page 2 of a 5-page document, and I don't know how many attorneys I've sat there and I've watched them not object to that for completion, but they need to. But anyways, that's enough of the comments on that. Our time is up for this edition of Law Talk. I'd like to thank our guests for taking time out of her busy schedule and being with us and sharing your thoughts and insights. If you'd like more information about Law Talk or any other program on Germantown Municipal Television, please refer to our website at www.gmtvonline.org. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to join us next month for more discussion on legal topics. Until then, I am Vince Perryman, and thank you for watching. So, yeah.